Maxx C has officially been hit on the OCG ban list. This is a monumental day. I literally never thought that this day would happen where they actually hit the bug on the OCG ban list. We thought that Konami wanted it to stick around in the OCG for eternity along with Master Duel because the card got hit in 2017. We're talking like nearly 8 years ago in the TCG is when it actually got banned. And since then, the OCG has been accustomed to playing with the card in the format. I mean, look at this. They banned Beatrice, which is obviously a given. We all know this was going to get hit, but they didn't hit anything else like Appaloosa or any of the Fiendsmith cards. It seems like the OCG is just strictly sticking towards limiting things instead of trying to ban cards, which I guess is fine and dandy, but there are a lot of cards that needed to be banned like Appaloosa. Anyways, the crazy part is you go down the limited list and this is where things actually get kind of wild. So we have Zodiac, Trident, and Masterpiece coming back. This is literally 2017 format all over again. We're getting Trident back in the game again after it previously got unbanned and rebanned for being too broken in Tri Brigade. And Masterpiece is kind of crazy because this deck is honestly like really annoying when you give them a floodgate monster that can't be unaffected by spell cards and monster effects. But then the one thing I realized is that Infinite Impermanence is actually in the game, and that is a direct answer to a Masterpiece that tributes using a monster and a spell. So that is kind of interesting how there's already kind of like some gameplay power creep mechanics that make the card not nearly as good as it once was. Not to mention the fact that there are a bunch of hand traps and like True Dragon just do not look very good. If you read the other cards besides Masterpiece, they are just not modern proof. Same thing with Dragoon. This card has been banned in the OCG. Originally, when Dragoon came out in the OCG, it was super broken because everyone's just splashing 3 copies of Dragoon with like Red Eyes Fusion into literally every deck. So now they're finally getting this bad boy back, and honestly, it's not going to do anything. Snatch Steal, we've already had it in the TCG, but there's one thing you should know about the OCG, and that's the fact that they have Change of Heart at 3 copies. So now they have 4 effective Change of Heart steal cards. I think Konami is kind of thinking about, you know, going second is tough in Yu-Gi-Oh! They want to enable more board breakers that create and promote some interactivity, so that's fine, whatever. Black Witch and Poplar going to 1. This was a little bit crazy because we just got Poplar and Snake Eye Ash to 1, but now OCG got Black Witch and Poplar to 1 alongside 1 copy of Wanted and the 1 copy of Snake Eye Ash. So the deck is severely crippled in the OCG now. I'm sure it's still playable, but we don't know if it's like the best deck. I just don't think that it can hold up to some of the other decks out there like Reizo that just came out. Also, Chandra going to 1. That's going to hurt the deck a lot because Chandra is obviously one of the main ways you actually OTK, facilitating all the special summoning from your deck, as well as being an extender in the hand, which was primarily one of the reasons the deck was so good because it could attack you from every single angle. You had Sangan Kaiman, Sangan Summoning, you had the Chandras in your hand, in your deck, but now the 1 copy, I feel like the deck is going to be a lot weaker. I still think it's going to be playable, good, maybe tier 2, but I definitely don't think it's nowhere near good enough to be tier 1, especially with the Ratio Cross in the format that can negate monster effects despite being under the protection of Sangan Summoning because it doesn't activate. Phantom of Yubel to 1 hurts Yubels a lot because now they cannot actually use the Phantom of Yubels as bodies. Previously, one of the main reasons was obviously the effect where you can change to destruction of a Yubel monster, but also being able to continuously cycle through 2 or 3 copies of Phantom of Yubel as Link climb fodder. Just to have a Fiend body on the board you can just Link spam over and over with was insane, so they kind of knocked that down. In fact, I don't even know if Yubel is remotely playable now with Phantom at 1 because that was predominantly one of the ways you get a bunch of bodies on the board to facilitate your Link spamming and going off in your Fiendsmith engine. Speaking of which, Fiendsmith and Tracked to 1. Okay, so the one thing that doesn't make sense for me is the fact that Tracked is at 1. I know a lot of people in the OCG traditionally play 2 copies, but now we're only getting 1, which is a little weird because it doesn't really matter if you just played 1 or 2 copies, but it also inadvertently hits the new Fable stuff that's coming out in the new Dual Terminal 02 side set. So I'm not sure why they decided to hit one of these Stratos for Fable. That's going to hurt the deck before it even comes out, but you know, maybe they just didn't do this before they announced the cards or vice versa. Fiendsmith to 1 is fine. Now, one thing that a lot of players have already been doing even in the TCG is when going second, you side out all of your Fiendsmith cards except for 1 Fiendsmith Engraver. And what that means is you can actually take advantage of the Moon of the Closed Heaven anyways to go off into that lone copy of Fiendsmith Engraver. So literally these Fiendsmith hits did not matter. They should have just banned Lacrima, but But obviously, OCG doesn't have the same time rules as we do. They still get like 3 to 5 turns, I believe, after time is called. So it doesn't really matter, but those are the cards that really allow Fiendsmith to full combo. Like, as it stands right now with Moon in the Close Heaven, you can still full combo with Fiendsmith. And like, Fiendsmith Engraver and Track to 1 certainly do not stop any of that. But it does do one thing, and it hits the consistency of actually opening Fiendsmith as an additional extender / starter. So that, along with a Beatrice ban, is actually, I guess, relevant enough, but they're still going to be around in the metagame. And then Bonfire to 1, I just saw this. Okay, so I guess they have Bonfire to 1 alongside the 1 copy of Poplar Ash, which wanted, they just limited everything instead of just banning Original / Flamberge. I still think Snake Eye is somewhat playable, or at least in some kind of shell, because we still have the simple Spoils Deception cards, and those cards can search with the Azumina stuff. They can search for Wanted to go into the 1 copy of Black Witch, who then bridges into the lone copy of Ash, so on and so forth. So I still think the deck, or the engine rather, is playable. The semi-limits are also huge. Like, this is one of the biggest, most chunkiest lists in the OCG format. Previously, we even had lists as little as like 1 or 2 changes or 0 changes, but now we're getting a bunch of changes. They're kind of following the TCG side of things, trying to reset the game. So we see Terror Top actually coming back to 2, previously from being limited, as well as Ava. Now, the OCG typically uses their semi-limited list as a checklist, like a checkpoint, a watch point. Either they're throwing cards on here to give you a signal like, hey, we're watching this card, we might hit it to limited or banned later on, or they move stuff down the list in the same fashion where they're like, okay, we're gonna put this in 7 limited, see how it does. If it's good, we just, you know, unleash it to the masses at 3. So that's what they're doing with MX Saber Invoker as well. That was previously came off the ban list to 1 and now to 2. Dinosaur Pancatops following the TCG. So now the OCG is getting inspiration from the TCG lists instead of just the other way around. So that's kind of nice. Branded opening coming back to 2. I know it was previously at 2, got hit to 1. Same with Fusion Destiny, that was on 1 for a long time. And then Gold Sark is actually going to 2, so that's kind of interesting. I'm not going to do anything, but it might be quite relevant in the actual Malice strategy, because those cards benefit from being banished. So that's kind of cool that they're deciding to add some more starters to existing cards that we have. Hopefully that comes in TCG as well. And then Luster Pendulum was always on their limited list. Goes in Match is finally going to 2. They're slowly moving the floodgates up. Nightmare Throne also consistently hit. And then the most surprising one was Maxx C. So they actually hit Maxx C on the ban list, which was crazy, which means, again, bearing in mind that this is a checkpoint for the ban list, does this mean that Maxx C is finally going to get hit to 0 in the OCG, and hopefully alongside that Master Duel? But the fact is, we're getting a lot of cards that are good going second, like Furos, that's not nearly as impactful as Maxx C. The problem with Maxx C is not only is it powerful going second, but also going first when you spit out a huge board and have Maxx C to back it up. Oftentimes, that means your Maxx C is protected by something like Appaloosa or maybe like an Omni Negate that can stop things like Called by the Grave or Ash Blossom from interacting with your Maxx C. So the player that's on the second turn, they're going second, it's really hard for them to actually break your board and play through Maxx C. Which is why it's good that they're printing cards like Full Rules to replace it. If they're completely replacing Maxx C in the OCG, that's a good sign. Full Rules can only be activated when you control no cards, meaning it's only useful on turn 0 or turn 1 of the game when you're going second. But Maxx C might finally see the last of its kind. Nearly like, what, it came out in 2012? So like 13 years later almost. That's crazy. And then, well, that was really the big thing in the ban list. The rest of the hits are not really relevant. The Dragon Rulers are finally going back to 3, Plush Fire, Spirals. Zeus was originally on the ban list, so now it's coming back to 3. Kirin, Lightning Storm, My Friend Purely, and Raigeki. None of these are really relevant at all, but again, Maxx C is super impactful. The limits were super high impact as well. Just some crazy new things coming out in the OCG, and I know a lot of players in the OCG were ecstatic in the Twitter. There's a lot of rants and raves. Some people hate it, some people love it. Yeah, curious to hear your guys' thoughts. What do you think? They're actually, seems like R&D is actually doing a 180, and they're trying to make the game a better, better in general. So I'm really happy for that. Hopefully the TCG follows suit. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. I'll see you all in the next video. Bye-bye.